Justification of corruption in Russian. Justification of corruption are stable cognitive and social mechanisms through which individuals and groups relieve themselves of moral and legal responsibility for corrupt behavior by presenting it as a normal, forced, socially acceptable, or not real corruption. This is not simply about lying or cynicism, but about rationalization that allow a person to preserve a positive self-image without entering into direct conflict with the law or their consciousness. From a perspective of psychology and social psychology, this represents a form of normative conflict in which legal norms and social norms diverge. When justification of corruption arises, justification tends to form in context where, first, the law is not perceived as fair. Second, the law does not operate equally for everyone. And third, social norms prove more effective than formal legal rules. Fourth, violations do not entail moral condemnation. It's in Russian. In such condition, corruption begins to be perceived not as a deviance, but as adaptation. Main mechanism of justification. First, it's normalization. People explain themselves, everyone does it. Corruption ceases to be an exception and becomes part of everyday practice. The law formally exists, but social reality operates according to different rules. Second, displacement of blame. In this case, people explain themselves that it's not my fault. My system is like that. Responsibility in this case shifted from the individual to the state, from the act to the circumstances, from the violation to the bad laws. Third, moral recording. In this case, people explain themselves. It's not a bribe, it's a gratitude, help, speeding things up. A change in language in this case occurs. Bribe, is it a gift? Kickback, it's share. Abusive oath, it's solving a problem. Fourth variant, utilitarian justification. Otherwise, it's impossible to survive. It's explanation for people who do this. Corruption is framed as a means of protection, as a form of self-preservation, compensation for injustice. Which social groups most often use such justifications? Firstly, it's a bureaucracy and the semi-state sector. Typically, justification include salary alone, responsibilities and normals. It's not for myself, but for my family. Corruption is perceived as an informal component of compensation package in this case. Social group, small business owners and the self-employed justify so, as without this, the business will not survive, the state is the enemy, I pay so they will not interfere. Here we see a conflict between norm and law. The law is perceived as repressive and unpredictable, while the social norm is to come to an arrangement. Third, ordinary citizens, everyday corruptions, and they are typical justifications. Otherwise, it will be worse for me, I didn't harm anyone, it's faster and easier this way. In this case, corruption is framed as a rational choice rather than a moral issue. Fourth social group is professional communities, such as doctors, teachers, inspectors. They are justifications. It's a tradition, it's a sign of respect. Without it, the system doesn't function. Corruption becomes embedded in professional culture. And the last, youth and adolescents, fifth, in the form of legal cynicism. They have so attitudes as the law is for my nueve, a smart person always finds a way around the rules, connections are what really matter. Here corruption is not yet a practice, but a worldview formed long before the direct experience. We can say about the historical roots of justification of corruption in Russian. Writer Mikhail Saltykov-Shchedrin wrote that the severity of Russian laws is softened by the fact that their enforcement is optional. Alexander Gertsen wrote, "We do not have a stable rubble of law, and many see this as our advantage." Alexander Solzhenitsyn, "The moral principle is more important than the legal one." Historically, in Russian, morality was often opposite to law, and personal connections were valued over institutions. Will, voля, was placed above formal legal norms. I want to make some marks about offenders convicted of corruptions. Research into the social and psychological characteristics of individuals convicted of corruption-related offenses shows that, unlike many persons convicted of ordinary criminal offenses, who often have prior convictions for similar crimes, most corruption offenders had not previously been prosecuted for comparable acts. Moreover, these individuals are generally social adaptive and communicative. Respondents are convicted that personal gain is not the prime motive behind corruption offenses. Most indicate alternative motives, such as a professional advanced, personal, or spiritual development, and gaining authority among colleagues. The most comprehensive expression of the individual's attitude toward corruption and corruption-related offenses is found in the sphere of economic consciousness. An individual's economic consciousness is a subjective reflection of the objective and stable properties and patterns that organize the economic activities of a state, enterprises, or households. Through evaluating socio-economic conditions, a person develops an internal model of the economic world, which serves as the basis for understanding and transforming economic reality. Economic consciousness includes socio-economic experience, emotion and feelings, representations and attitudes characteristic of particular individual. Research into economic consciousness, closely linked to the socio-economic activity, has become a central framework for studying attitudes toward corruption across different social groups, including minors. Many high school students associate their future with the state institutions, but in a specific way. Employment is viewed as a means of gaining access to the distribution of material and symbolic goods controlled by the state. Some students' aspirations for economic well-being way take a criminal orientation, reflecting the belief that substantial wealth can be achieved only by violating the law, including through participation in corrupt transactions. High school students typically associated corruption with bribery, money, extortion, illegal actions, payment for service, actions of officials, or large-scale economic crimes. However, these associations often reveal a distorted understanding of legal definitions. Bribes may be perceived as a gift, voluntary gratitude, or legitimate payments, and none of the surveyed students were able to clearly distinguish a gift from bribe. Such findings indicate significant misconceptions in adolescents' evaluations of economic and legal realities. Young people, particularly university students, tend to view corruption as a dangerous social phenomenon, manifested primarily in economic crime. It's about 83.7%. They distinguish between social, economic, cultural, historical, psychological, legal, and political causes of corruption, and differentiate systematic causes from individual corrupt behavior, which they see as mediated by personal values. At the same time, they identify entrenched corrupt environments in public institutions and low living standards of public servants as a key determinants, often expressed in sympathy or understanding toward offenders. Only a small proportion, about 9.75%, recognized a broader social consciousness such as inequality, social tension, decline in public service, governor dysfunction, and loss of institutional legitimacy. Among adults, representations of corruption are more categorical and structured, yet marked by internal contradictions. While 97.3% condemned crimes against the state's foreign policy interests, 87% consider certain economic offenses against the state or public property acceptable. Psychologists contribute to anti-corruption efforts through the monitoring anti-corruption legislations, diagnosing official psychological characteristics, and applying specialized methods such as polygraph testing. Another important direction is fostering economic legal consciousness among young and informal system of internalized legal norms, stereotypes, values, and attitudes that shape perceptions, emotional responses, and behavior reactions. Key measures include promoting citizen participation in anti-corruption initiatives, simplifying reporting mechanisms, identifying corruption networks and socio-cultural determinants, strengthening public trust in institutions, analyzing motives and justifications of corruptions, examining generational and cross-cultural differences, and forming anti-corruption social norms and values. Take together, the indicators describing the categories' attitude toward correctional measures reveal fundamental positive behavior. Participation in educational programs, active involvement in inmate self-governance organizations, conscientious attitude toward work, and relative high level of education and professional training. It was also found that majority of those convicted of corruption offenses had not carefully considered the possibility of evading criminal liability, whereas more than half of those convicted of economic or general criminal offenses had contemplated such possibilities. More than half of corruption offenders had not even reflected on their likelihood of criminal responsibility at the time of committing their offense. Most individuals convicted of corruption-related crimes believed that their punishment was unjust, citing reasons such as the absence of corpus delicti, lack of elements of a crime, or accessibility harsh punishment. Such perceptions are not typically among individuals convicted of general criminal or economic offense. Furthermore, respondents tend to deny that personal gain was the primary motive for their actions. The majority indicated alternative motives for committing corruption-related offenses, such as a professional advance, personal development, or gaining authority and recognition among colleagues. Overall, psychological analysis suggested that individuals convicted of corruption offenses differ in important respects from those convicted of general or economic crimes. They are often socially integrated, professionally established, and inclined to interpret their action not as a criminal conduct driven by greed, but as a situation or professional motivated behavior.